Lord, haste the day when the faith shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. Please be seated.
Morning. I don't know about you, but I get to experience it every Sunday morning, and I think you experience it quite often yourselves. But there's going to come a time in your life when people are looking at you and waiting for you to say something, waiting to catch a word of wisdom or catch something that can make them laugh or encourage them or to bring them back to center. And that's an overwhelming task, whether it's with your friends or whether it's with your coworkers, whether it's with your family. And those are situations where what do we say in situations? You kind of grab yourself, you just woosah moment, right? Well, this morning we're going to be talking about Solomon, but before we do, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. The chances are this morning, a lot of you, if you've grown up going to Bible school or going to church somewhere, listening to stories, you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, tell me something I don't already know. And that's a challenge, right? And to be encouraged and to be strengthened. That's one of the beautiful things about God's Word is we can go to it at different times in our life, and because of our maturity, our experiences in life, because of our understanding of Scripture, and because of the context, we begin to see things that maybe we didn't see before, or maybe we missed because it didn't speak to us at that time. And God finds a way to do that. So this morning, we are kind of going to be dealing with some things that have been there, done that, because Solomon had been there, done that. We know from 1 Kings that he cried out to God for wisdom in a dream. God shall give you whatever you want. And he asked God for wisdom and discernment as he was leading his people. And we know that God gave it to him. We also know in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 29, this: God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and breadth of understanding, as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the men of the East, and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than any other man, including Ethan the Ezrahite, wiser than Haman, Calcol, or Darda, the sons of Mahol. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs. His songs numbered 1,005. He described plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also taught about animals and birds, reptiles and fish. Men of all nations came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. Point being, Solomon was a wise guy. He experienced a lot of things, saw a lot of things, and one of the things, if you study the story of Solomon, you see that he was a prodigal son in a lot of ways. He started off in a good race with God, he got away from God, and then ultimately he starts finding his way back. All right, so this morning, if you would, go ahead and turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. We've been in Proverbs the last several weeks, but I wanted to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And I wanted to lay that groundwork for you that Solomon didn't just know about God, he knew about God's creation. And people from all over the world were coming to hear and to learn from him. The same way people today try to go to different universities or different lectures or different TED Talks because they want to learn from somebody that's a perceived expert. Except Solomon wasn't just perceived to be, he was. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, written in a poetic way, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Nothing. You don't get anything. That's what Solomon's implying. I don't know about you, but there are times in my life where I know people, and I've done this myself. See if you can relate. You get up with the alarm clock. Maybe you have to hit snooze 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're that person that sets it across the room. Or maybe you're that person that's so keyed into waking up the same time every day, you wake up before the alarm goes off. But you get up and you have your morning routine. Everybody's routine is different, but you have your morning routine. Now imagine getting up, putting on your clothes, having your cup of coffee, getting in a car, driving 3 hours down to Grand Isle, working all day, getting back in your car and driving back 3 hours to New Iberia, going into your home, trying to get stuff done around the house you got to get done, say hi to your wife, maybe call your kids if you can, and then go to bed and get up and do it again tomorrow. Who am I talking about? Kim Tuchet. But the reality is all of us have jobs that we go to. Or we have a life that we go to every day, or we've had a job in the past that we go to every day. And it gets to be routine, right? Now, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing, right? It's not. But what Solomon's saying here is, look, what do people gain from all their labors? So what do you gain ultimately? You're getting income, you get a house, you get a boat, you get a car, you get vacations, you get the clothes that you want, but what are you gaining from your labor and your toil under the sun? And that's why Solomon's going to say nothing. This is the wisest man who has ever lived, recognized by all around him and recognized by God, and the wisdom given to him by God. Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north, and round it goes, ever returning to it on its course. Everything goes as it always has. Nothing changes. Therefore, everything is vanity. And they say change is coming, but nothing changes. How many times do we hear, change is coming? I'm going to change. They're going to change. It's going to get better. I'm going to back up. Generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. All of us are part of a generation. We have those who've come before us, and we have those who will come after us. Generations come and go. He's speaking wisdom. He's speaking truth. Nothing significant about that, right? All streams flow into the sea. Yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, they return again. And all things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. He's basically saying, I can't get any satisfaction. The ocean never has enough. The streams keep coming. In life, we learn that if I get that one more thing, I'll be happy, and we find out we're not. If I get this, I'll be happy. Or if I become friends with this person, it'll make me happy. And maybe for a while, but ultimately we leave unsatisfied. How many times have we gone to a buffet and walked out going, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? Only to be hungry a few minutes later. It's like Sisyphus, the Greek myth of the man who cheated death twice. And so Zeus curses him to roll this big rock up out of Hades all the way up, only as he gets to the top for it to roll back down and do it all over again. What's the point? You get up, you go to work every day, you change clothes, you exercise. You go to your job. You have your routine, but ultimately, what's the point? What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. The older I get, the more I realize that to be true. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was already here long ago. It was here before our time. Solomon's saying you might think it's new, but it's not. You might think the troubles that we're facing in our culture today are new. They're not. You may think the emptiness that you're facing is new and just that's something that you deal with in your life. It's not. You may think this great thing you've come up with is new. It's not. There's nothing new under the sun. No one remembers the former generations, and yet even those to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Read this one out loud together, if you would. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. No one remembers the former generations. Morgan, how you feel about that? You don't have to answer it out loud. There's going to come a generation that's not going to know about you in your own family. There's going to come a time when people don't know who you are, Tammy, Harold, Ken. There's going to come a time when a generation comes that does not know you exist. It will be like you never lived on the planet. And that's just the reality of life. I can go back X number of generations, but I can't go all the way back to the beginning. And there's going to come a time when the work that you've done will be forgotten and be credited to somebody else. It's a struggle to feel forgotten, because some of you already feel forgotten. Standing in the midst of people. What about me? I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. Solomon's been talking to us, and now he's coming down to a point where he's saying, look, I'm wise. You guys know that. I'm a wise guy. People have come from all over the world to learn from me. I am the teacher. I was king over Israel, and I applied my mind to study and to explore wisdom, all that is done under the heavens. He's given his credibility here, right? What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. He's saying, I'm the wisest to ever live, and I'm telling you that ultimately, everything is meaningless. Not very encouraging, is it? I mean, you open up the Bible and you look at it, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and you're looking for some chance to get encouraged and to be edified, and the quote-unquote, the preacher gets up and he starts reading it, and he's reading from the words of Solomon, who was the wisest guy that ever lived, and you're like, wait a minute, Kenny, I came here to be encouraged today. I came here to find a nugget to help me get through the next week. And you're telling me that I'm not going to be remembered? No, I'm not. God is, through Solomon. That all the stuff I'm pursuing is not going to satisfy me. And that basically everything I do, new job, new career, it's meaningless. Well, it doesn't feel meaningless. I feel pretty important. I mean, I'm the lead, I'm the boss. I scored the winning touchdown. I got a new boat. I got a new car. I've got a family. I feel pretty important. But in the overall scheme of things, he's saying it's meaningless because it's going to come and go. It's not eternal. It doesn't last. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. There's some things, there's nothing anyone can do about it. You ever been there? You ever faced a situation that you couldn't fix? A thing you couldn't change, no matter how much you wanted to? No matter how much money you threw at it, no matter how much wisdom you threw at it, no matter how much time you threw at it, there's just some things you can't do about it. Can anybody in here control time? No. You can't. You can learn how to use it to your advantage, to make the most of it, but you cannot stop the clock. It's going, and it will continue to beat. I said to myself, Solomon says, look, I've increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ever ruled over Jerusalem before me, and I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to understanding of wisdom and also to madness and folly. So I'm not just trying to be smart and to be wise. And remember we studied a few weeks ago about being prudent? To be a prudent man, make wise decisions. He says, I went to the other side of it, and I just want to be mad and folly and just have a great time and just do something that was stupid. But I learned that this too is chasing after the wind. And what's that feel like, to chase after the wind? Anybody? What's that? Pointless, futile. Because it is. We don't need Solomon to tell us that. We already know it. Solomon's saying, believe me, I'm the wisest of all, and I know what I'm talking about. It's depressing. No? If we ended right here, would it be depressing? I'm seeing some head shaking, yes. There are people that you know every day who already feel this way. Like, what's the point? They lose hope and they give up. There's a big word there, hope. Solomon's given a warning. Big lights, big sounds. He's warning, warning. The things you're chasing, the things you desire, the things you're learning, the things you value are pointless and meaningless, including your family name. For with much wisdom cuts much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. It was so much easier being a little boy, little girl, you know. You didn't know much. Mama, give me the bottle. Dad, let me ride my bike. Just go out and play and have fun. Then you start learning that things cost. And that bobos get bigger the older you get. And that your health turns. You know, once you're a fully healthy, physical young man or young woman, and then one day your body's just not working the way it's used to or the way it's supposed to. Start learning those things. You start learning that the people you put your trust in on earth let you down. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the more you know, the more grief. Tolstoy says, the only absolute knowledge attainable by man is that life is meaningless. There's a lot of people who feel that way. There's a lot of people who feel like, what's the point in life? Why go on? Why keep up? Because they begin to understand, what's the point? Had it, I've lost it, I get it again, I'll lose it again, and I can't take it with me. Because the clock has us all moving towards our last breath. Young, old, rich, poor, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, we're all headed towards something. So what's the point? Why kill myself? I don't have to. I don't mean literally. Why kill myself working? I'm going to lose it all anyway. That's kind of the mindset sometimes. But in steps Jesus. You would go ahead and be turning over to Matthew chapter 11. Jesus has performed some miracles. John the Baptist is in jail, going to be having his head cut off here pretty soon, and he sends his disciples over to ask asked Jesus, hey, are you the one that is to come, or should we expect somebody else? And Jesus says, go tell John what you have seen and what you have heard. And so they go back and tell John in his lines, okay, you are the Messiah, you're the one we were expecting, you're the one with the words of God, because his clock was ticking and about to come to an end. I mean, it'd be very easy for John the Baptist to say, look, I've been preaching, I've been out in the way preparing in the wilderness for you, and now I'm here and I'm locked up and I'm about to die because some woman's got a grudge against me and the king's not doing what he's supposed to. I've been serving you. What's the point, Jesus? And Jesus saying, go tell John what you've seen and what you heard. And then he starts dealing with some people who don't believe who he is. Even with the miracles, they don't believe. And then Jesus does this. At that time, Jesus prayed this prayer. O Father, Lord of heaven and earth. I want to stop because I think this is important because I miss this a lot of times in my own reading. This is Jesus having a one-on-one conversation with the Father, the one that gave Solomon his wisdom, the one that we believe by faith spoke the world into creation. So if Jesus has something to say, it's probably a good idea to listen to him. If Solomon's words depress you, Jesus' words should encourage you. At that time, Jesus prayed this prayer, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike. This is from the New Living Translation. Yes, Father, it pleased you to do it this way. He's saying, look, you hid these things from people, but you have to have a childlike faith to see it. And it was done on purpose. In order to see the things that God has in store, you and I must have a childlike faith to see it. My Father has entrusted everything to me, is the way he's telling the disciples. Everything has been entrusted to me. No one truly knows the Son except the Father, and no one truly knows the Father except the Son, and to those whom the Son chooses to reveal him. And Jesus is choosing to reveal himself and reveal God to his disciples and ultimately to all mankind. Then Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary, and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. I'm guessing you have heard this, you've heard it preached, you've seen the t-shirts, and here we go again. It's just one of those things we just know. But don't miss it. Jesus is saying, come to me. It's a choice. You have a life that seems pointless. You have a life that seems meaningless. You feel like there's no hope. You feel like there's nothing to look forward to. You're going to be forgotten one day. Jesus says, come to me. You don't have to. I'm not going to make you. It's not how he operates. He says, come to me. Who? All of you who are weary. And let's be honest. Look around this room. Look up here. There's some weary people. We're going to be going out and serving in the community today and serving up here. Some people are not going to be able to do it because of their schedule. Some are not going to be able to do it because they have other plans that they need to take care of. And those are good reasons. But some are not going to do it because they're just too weary. How many times have you not played with your kids because you're weary? How many times have you not done something that needs to be done because you're weary? I just don't feel like it. But come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. It doesn't matter how heavy the backpack is. It's your backpack. Your burden's not somebody else's burden. It's your burden. And you're the one carrying it. Now, one of the things these guys learned on Trek is your backpack's as heavy as what? As you make it. The more stuff you put into that backpack, the heavier it gets. Now, some of it you need, and some of it's pointless. And you learn real quick what you need and what you don't. Commercial. First trek I ever went on. We were climbing Mount Antara in the southern corner of Colorado. And I was so excited about it. And you guys can relate. You guys have been backpacking. Colorado's beautiful. And I consider myself an outdoorsman, but I was also, I was 29 years old, and I was hungry. You know, I get hungry a lot. You know, you guys, if I could have enough food camping, I want to bring some stuff. So I brought summer sausages, 2 pounds each. I brought a box with 4 things of crackers in them. You may not be thinking about that. They tell you to bring 2 T-shirts and some shorts, right? I brought a change of clothes for every day. I brought extra tennis shoes. I brought a bunch of stuff, which doesn't seem like much to you. But 30 minutes into our hike, I'm dying. That backpack is heavy. I'm dealing with elevation. I'm dealing with going uphill. I'm living in Baytown, Texas, which is basically living here. I couldn't find a breath. I was struggling. The kids were kind of walking around like no big deal, and we sit down, get a break. And I remember walking over to the guide, and I said, hey, is it okay if I go back and drop this stuff off in the van? Because I knew how to get back to the van. He said, consider it a lesson in humility. We told you what to pack, and you didn't. At which point, I was like, you dog. I was mad, I was mad because one of the guides had gone back. But it was my own fault. I chose to carry a lot of stuff I didn't need. And sometimes the burdens we're carrying are things we won't let go of. Things that have happened to us, things we missed out on. We carry burdens that we don't necessarily need to have, but sometimes it's the burden of loving the loved ones who are struggling. And we burdens for them. Cancer. Maybe they didn't get into the school they wanted to get into. Maybe their spouse left them. Maybe they got left at the altar. You have burdens for people. But he says, come to me all you are weary and heavy burdens, and what? What's he going to do? That's the invitation, right? But chances are you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So I'm not telling you, no matter how I wrap it up, you've already heard this. But wait, there's more. Jesus says, take my yoke upon you. Now, everybody who's done farming knows more about than I do, but it's the idea of 2 oxen, and they have a yoke around their neck, and you guide them with that, basically. And Jesus is saying, pair up with me and put my yoke upon you. Let me teach you. So it's a choice. Choice to what? Take his yoke up. To choice to what? Let him teach you. What's he going to teach you? Take my yoke upon you because I am humble and gentle at heart. He does for us what the law could never do. He's about to do away with the law of Moses, with his death, and when he cries out, it is finished. He's about to do away with that. And they have grown up under the law and under the tradition taught by man. For I am humble and gentle in heart, and what? You will find rest for your souls. Some of you in here have experienced that rest for your soul when you've gone to Jesus. Some of you haven't. Some of you think it was a bill of goods you got sold that hey, what's up with this? Abby became a child of God last week and gave her life to Christ. She's a brand new babe in Christ. She wanted to give herself to God, to sacrifice herself, to be raised up new into him, and to learn from him. She wants that rest. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Did you catch that? My yoke is easy to bear. You're going to have to bear it. But the burden I give you is light. It doesn't say you're not going to have a burden. He says, I am going to give you a burden. So these are the action steps today. Number 1, ask yourself and answer honestly. Do I have a childlike faith? Don't look at it flippantly. Think back to when you were a child and Christmas was coming and Easter. Children learn not to believe. Children learn to be angry. Children learn not to believe in the impossible. There was a time when you believed you could fly. There was a time when you believed you could be a superhero. You could be anything you wanted to be because you had a childlike faith. Then ask yourself, what am I weary of and burdened by? Get a piece of paper. I did this with Tommy a few weeks ago. Write out what it is you're weary of. Name it. What are you burdened by? Name it. Get it out in the open. Ask yourself honestly, have I come to Jesus or to religion? Because there is a difference. Jesus' yoke was not about religion. Jesus' yoke was about relationship. Have I taken Jesus' yoke upon me? And if so, what am I learning from him? Because he says, if you put my yoke on, you're going to learn from me. Why? Because if I'm yoked to Jesus, what does that imply? Everywhere he goes, what? I'm going. Everything he says, I hear. I watch. I learn. I do. So have I taken Jesus' yoke upon me? What am I learning? Here's a big one. Am I a disciple who's following him, or am I merely a follower? See, the crowds followed him, but not every one of them was a disciple. A disciple is someone who takes the yoke upon him and begins to learn and do what the teacher does. The idea is as I take the yoke of Jesus upon me and I become a disciple, then I do the things that he did so that I can become conformed into his image. Or am I merely a follower? I listen, I learn, but not necessarily do. That's important because in Matthew 28, he tells his disciples, go make disciples, not followers. What burden has Jesus given me? And what is he teaching me? Because God doesn't waste any situation. He works for our good in all situations. But sometimes we need to stop and think about these things. We get on cruise control because we're caught up in the monotony of the day in, the day out routine. It's important that we stop to learn. And then have I found rest for my soul? You've got to ask yourself that. Because you can come in here and I can come in here and be all lovey-dovey, huggy, and singing songs, but be anything but at rest with my soul. Because we've learned to mask that. And Jesus says, when you take my yoke upon you, you don't have to mask it anymore. You got to ask yourself why or why not. What I have learned in my life when I'm not at rest with my soul is when I'm not learning and following and doing what Jesus has called me to do. One last passage, and then Kyle will come up and lead us in our song. Solomon laid out a pretty bleak thing for us, didn't he? And here's the deal. If you're living for just this life, it will always be bleak. If you're living for just this time, it will always be bleak. Always. Even when you're making the best income of your life, it will be bleak because you begin to realize on those cold nights or when you're in the hospital bed getting to the end of your life and you realize, this is it. 5 cars, 3 cars, 2 cars, that didn't do me any good. House in the Hamptons, a house on the West Coast, East Coast, that didn't do me any good. 100 pair of shoes, that didn't do me any good. Being successful at work, it gave me, maybe life was good for a while, but at the end, it's not doing me any good. I'm dying. And if you look at it just from an earthly point of view, you're going to find that. At the end of Ecclesiastes, Solomon says this in 12:9 and following. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They're collected sayings like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. There's a lot of books with a lot of information in them. You can Google, you can YouTube, you can get out your old Britannicas and World Book that I have in my office. You get a lot of information. There's no end. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. I know some of you do these action steps every week, and I've been told by several of you enjoy getting them. So I'm trying to give them to you every week. But I'm just going to tell you what you already know. Well, this life without an eternal perspective is pointless. Rick, you might get that TV, I mean that what's that thing? Wait, what is it you wanted? That refrigerator, right? He's looking for a refrigerator for his to keep his cold drinks in at work. He's going to get that. Only going to be able to put so many drinks in it, right? But at least it'll be cold. You're getting ready to go off to college. You're going to get an education. That's going to be great. But in the end, none of that matters without an eternal perspective. Because when you have an eternal perspective, and what you learn from Jesus is now my job that I go to every day becomes my ministry to others. To be a messenger of hope, and a messenger of light, and a messenger of love. My name doesn't matter. It'll be forgotten here, but it is recorded in the blood of Jesus in the book of life, and it will never be forgotten. And there will come a day when I will stand before him, and he's going to say my prayer, well done, good and faithful servant. Those are the words I want to hear. And that changes everything about my life because it takes it from a temporal point of view and puts an eternal perspective on it, which makes life worth living and a joy for me and a joy for you. If you'll have that childlike faith. Stand and sing.